The Tahitian pearl was a gift from the god Oro, who was the god of peace and war and fertility. He gave it to the princess of Bora Bora, who he was in love to. He said, I will gather all the colors of the fish and the corals in the sea. I will mix all those colors and give the pearl to the humanity.
Human beings have always had a desire to adorn themselves. Pearls have been a symbol of wealth, wisdom, spirituality, and love. There are natural pearls and cultured pearls from the rivers and seas, and then there are fakes. Sometimes, like love itself, it's hard to tell the difference.
I don't understand the mystery of pearls. I just know that they're very fascinating. You know, I look at them and I'm like, how do people know between a real one and a fake one? I had to learn that very quickly. And then I started realizing that, like the Queen of England, and there are people like the Queen and some very, very rich people, that they actually value the pearls more than their diamonds. And in some cases, the pearls are even more expensive than the diamond. And then when you think about how a pearl is made, it's fascinating that it's actually naturally occurring and made by nature. It's beautiful and it could be worn. And imagine just from the sea something opening and seeing a beautiful pearl. It must have been mind-blowing when they started discovering all these treasures in the earth and the sea.
Thousands of years ago, in most parts of the world, pearls were the first gem that primitive cultures came across and used to adorn themselves.
When they came upon the oyster, think that it's a sea dredge, rock or animal. Which of the animal kingdoms does it belong to? They take this oyster and they open it up and it transforms. And it's as if, in some ways, the moon has come down to the earth. All these very simple, not even civilizations yet, would find these jewels from time to time. And for some of them, not all, they would become one of the most miraculous objects in their life. They were so rare, they were so beautiful, so full of symbols, that the people assumed that they must have powers, and they spent their time trying to ascertain what those powers might be.
Man has always tried to explain how pearls appeared. Some say it was from dewdrops, others the tears of Aphrodite. In all major religions, pearls are a symbol of something most precious, a child, purity, wisdom, and love.
Christopher Columbus, when Isabel and Ferdinand sent him to the New World, at the very top of the list of riches for them to bring back to the royalty were pearls.
Explorations of the New World were also known as the Age of Pearls. Because of their rarity and value, pearls were instrumental in unifying a world system of wealth and power.
And pearls were part of their life, part of their passion. Marriages were concluded because the wife or the husband possessed pearls. And when you look at the old books here, the men, the Maharajas themselves, the kings, they were wearing pearls. Not only the ladies, but the men too. It was the Venetians who brought back pearls. It was the Romans went after pearls and brought them back home. Look at the importance of pearls in the life of Alexander the Greek, because he realized the importance, not only the value, but what comes with it, possessing pearls.
And in about 1223, in Venice, there was a law that nobody other than the royal family could wear pearls. And even if you were caught wearing simulated pearls, you were banished from the city. Same in England, you were not allowed to wear pearls unless you were of royal descent. Actually, in the Roman times, the ladies would go to bed wearing their pearls, because when they woke up, it would remind them of how wealthy they were.
This desire for pearls in the 1st century AD enticed Julius Caesar to invade Britain in search of freshwater pearls found in the rivers of Scotland. Pearls were light and portable, and a currency for wealth for hundreds of years. In France during the 1870s revolution, a pearl saved the life of Princess Eugénie, Napoleon III's wife. She traded her prized Tiffany Queen pearl for a safe passage to England.
Up until the stock market crash of 1929, that pearls were probably the most valuable item, just weighing it out in carats. And if a man like Rockefeller wanted a necklace, even with all his money, it wasn't about going in and saying, I'll have one. He'd go in and say, I want one, and then 5, 7, 10, 15 years later, they'd be able to present it. But it took that long to put one together.
Up until the 20th century, there were only natural pearls or fakes. Finding a pearl was difficult enough, but finding pearls that matched in color, size, and shape was almost impossible. Divers and pearl dealers would rarely, in a lifetime, be able to assemble one necklace of matching pearls.
One day, a fisherman came to me and asked me to grade a natural pearl, a natural black pearl that he found in an oyster. So I look at it and I say, I cannot give you a price for that pearl. I cannot price that pearl because it's so rare, only an auction will give the real price. And it's sold for $200,000 US. I have seen only once happen. And it is said that to be able to find a natural pearl, you have to open 15,000 Tahitian pearl oysters.
They work very well with the bubbles over time. With Cleopatra and how she would take her pearl earring. Listen to the sound of these.
One of the myths or possible true tales of history is the contest that was challenged between Antony and Cleopatra. And the challenge was who could give the most elaborate, and I suppose it was most expensive banquet. Cleopatra gave the dinner, and she had this amazing pearl that was famous as being one of the most valuable pearls. And she took it and crushed it into a drink and drank it.
She was at the point of taking off her other pearl earring to drink that as well, where the judges leapt up and halted the competition because she certainly won.
And an aphrodisiac was born. Cleopatra would not be the last to appreciate pearls' sexual powers beyond their monetary value.
Now, the reason she had won is that the pearls were so highly valued and so coveted that it's said that that one pearl earring of hers was valued at 80,000 pounds of Roman gold. And in one account, one of the military generals named Vitellius, he took one pearl from the earring of his mother and it paid for an entire military campaign.
The fact is, you couldn't have a big pearl necklace unless you were incredibly wealthy. And what they used to do is do one at a time. They called it add a pearl. And you'd start giving a girl a pearl necklace when she was 5 or 6, and you'd just do one pearl each year, each birthday or whatever. And then when she was old enough, she'd have a pearl necklace. But these little tiny pearls. Not something that the girls we know want. They want the big ones. That's pearls, amongst the most valuable things in the world.
Adorned by the rich and famous, not only for how they look, but also how they feel. When you see someone wearing a pearl, It's hard to imagine that this little gem was made by an animal. Pearl oysters are only found in pristine, remote parts of the world.
Those areas are free from any pollution. So those kind of oysters can have a very healthy environment. The only problem we might have someday will be probably the greenhouse effect, because the rise of the water temperature can be a problem. So that's why this production is rare, still rare. The pearl is the only gem who is a living gem. The pearl formation comes from an accident. The pearl oyster it's a self-defense reaction from the pearl oyster against the intrusion of foreign substance. They transmutate it in a jewel.
It can be a grain of sand, something that has irritated the oyster. When the oyster gets irritated, it tries to protect itself. And the way of protecting itself is that it will then create a nacre, a pearl substance around the irritant. And that is when a natural pearl begins its life.
The nacre is a translucent, luminous calcium substance which builds up layer after layer over the irritant inside the oyster. It is the nacre that gives the pearl its luster.
This is a wonderful, heart-shaped, natural pearl, a Baroque pearl. And Baroque meaning misshapen. A living organism has creeped into the oyster. And then that little organism is trapped inside the oyster. It then dissolves. But it gives off gases, creating bubbles inside the oyster, which the nacre is forming over. This brooch here is from the 1890s, and the pearl, though, will have been a lot earlier. One doesn't know. You can't tell the age of a pearl. It's an enigma. You just don't know.
The desire and value of pearls has led man from the earliest time to search for the secret of how to create pearls.
Up to 2,000 years ago, we have found shells where we know that the Chinese were inserting some foreign body between the shell and the animal inside, and that this foreign body was then covered by nacre.
They used to put lead Buddhas into the oysters, and then the nacre would go around the lead Buddha, and then you've got a Buddha pearl.
Man has always tried to imitate nature. Culturing pearls involves the same organic process that has formed natural pearls, but with a little help from man, inserting a foreign body into the oyster around which the nacre forms. All natural or cultured pearls are finished and ready to wear when they come out of the oyster.
There is no chemicals whatsoever apart from a mild detergent used and just a polishing wax. These particular goods have actually been sorted for strand making.
Allure South Sea pearls have been in the Australian cultured pearl industry for over 20 years. Each year's harvest sees millions of dollars worth of pearls pass through their hands. There is a myriad of shapes and sizes.
We have 6 individual shapes. The rounds, near rounds, drops, buttons, baroques and circles. Now there could be as many as 8 or 9 different shapes of drops within the drop category.
I have here a string of South Sea Baroque cultured pearls, and these are around about £15,000. And these are getting extremely popular, in fact, sometimes even more popular than the round pearls. Because of their uniqueness, you will never get another pearl the same shape like these.
Every time there's a harvest, it's like a Christmas day. No producer really knows how the crop is going to be. I mean, it's like opening an oyster and finding a very special gift inside. It's a very exciting moment when you do find a perfect 19 or 20 millimeter pearl.
The quest for the perfect cultured pearl begins in the laboratories with the artificial seeding of the oyster in its shell. A bead or core is inserted around which the nacre can form. Once the seeded shell is placed back into the sea, the hope is that each one of these oysters produces a lustrous pearl, large and perfectly round. But it will be nature that ultimately decides what emerges.
Several years ago, I was in Houston, Texas, having lunch with a friend, one of the grand dames of Texas, and we were sitting at a table near the front of the restaurant, which was her table. And a friend stopped by on the way out. Our lunch was almost finished, and said, you know, I'm so pleased to see you, and by the way, those pearls are just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I thought, wasn't that lovely? She has nice pearls, and she had on pretty earrings and beautiful couture clothes. Anyway, after her friend left, she said to me, I am so embarrassed. I said, why are you embarrassed? I said, it was a lovely compliment. She said, these are fake pearls. I said, well, you know, so what? You've saved all that money. You didn't have to buy a real one. She said, I can't fool my friends. And she said, this is a woman in her 80s. She said, I've put it off all these years. Could you please get me a necklace that matches this one? And, you know, it was several $100,000, but I had no trouble doing it. And she's now dead, but she died happy with her pearls. And the fact is, when you have that kind of money, what difference does it make? I mean, for her, it was like a ham sandwich.
In the atolls, you have nothing. You have the lagoon, fish, and coconut trees. And now you have pearls. For us, it's very important. It's an industry. We estimate that 7,000 people involved in pearl farming. They really are taking care of their shells. They're really taking care of them like their children.
The pearl culturing industry is time-consuming and labor-intensive. There are many risks and threats to the oyster. The shells are cleaned regularly to keep them healthy and free from disease, to give a better chance for a pearl to be produced.
From the harvest, you know, they will have only half of the oyster which will give birth to pearls. And from those half, only 5% will be of a very high quality. And among those 5%, only 1 or 2% will be of a very, very special color. So in a way, it's a cultivation process, but it's also a lottery.
When I lecture to gemological associations and so forth about pearls, I often say, if a pearl looks good, it is good. They say that's not a very scientific way of describing a good pearl, but truly, the luster, what you look for in a pearl is three things: luster, 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 and perhaps a fourth one, more luster. Because the luster is caused by the refraction of light between the different layers, so the thicker the coating, the better the luster.
Australia produces the biggest and best quality South Sea cultured pearls with the thickest coating of nacre. They are mainly white, with shades of pink and cream undertones.
The reflection on these first two pearls is quite strong amongst the top luster. I mean, the second pearl is remarkably the better of the two. But as you go on to the third pearl there, you can see that the reflection is quite opaque and there's not as much definition in there. See, that pearl there is nearly just under 21 millimeters. I mean, we've only had, I think, 2 pearls of 21 millimeters last year of this quality, and this is not a perfect pearl. I mean, it's still very good quality, but it's not what we consider to be A grade. As you get into the bigger sizes, and percentage of the bigger sizes are considerably lower, then it is very, very rare to get a 17, 18, 19 or 20 millimeter A grade round. So anything that you see here is really, in a way, it's a freak. So it's a very, very unusual pearl.
These South Sea cultured pearls are the ultimate in perfection. You've got 20 millimeter pearls down to 15 millimeter pearls, absolutely huge. You have to be able to put your mind back as to how these were formed, how these were developed by nature. In the oyster, it would have taken years and years to get something like this, and to have them all matching. You would have had to have gone through, gosh, 300,000 oysters to try and find a necklace of this quality. The bigger the pearl, the longer it has been inside the oyster, and the rarity of it is if it comes out a spherical, clean, smooth, luster and orient about it.
When a strand of perfect pearls appeared, they were worth an absolute fortune. I mean, my favorite story was Mrs. Platt, who traded her house, which is now Cartier on the corner of 52nd Street and 5th Avenue, marvelous house, for 2 strands of pearls.
And she didn't have the money, and I don't know what it was at the time. Maybe she didn't have the cash on hand, but she wasn't thinking of anything but buying these pearls. And she thought and thought, and then she decided, well, I can trade my house for this 2 strands of pearl necklaces. And she did. She gave them the title to her house, and she took the pearls, and then about a year later, the stock market crashed, and the pearls were not worthless, but very nearly that. And Cartier owned her house, which is now their flagship store in New York. And when we sold the pearls, they brought $190,000 at auction. On the other hand, they're just as beautiful now as they were the day she got them. So, I mean, it really is one of those things where beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Every pearl has its history and its secrets. At first it seems an unassuming gem, until you get to know it. As a jewel, it is unique, as it allows the wearer to take the limelight. The cultured pearl industry is valued at over $500 million a year, but good quality pearls are still very rare. A simple cultured pearl necklace can take up to 10 years, from the seabed to the shop window.
A lot of people look at a pearl in a jewelry store at $1,000, $5,000 for a pearl. Yeah, some necklaces go up to a number of hundreds of thousands of dollars and think this must be a good way of making a quick buck. But there's tremendous imponderables and things beyond our control. With the very best technology in the world, we can't stop cyclones, and cyclones can ravage the pearl farms. Wherever pearl oysters grow, there are cyclones. We're in the field of animal husbandry because we're really looking after animals. We inspect almost every oyster on the farm, almost every day. We clean every oyster on the farm every 2 weeks. And the divers will come back and talk about happy pearl oysters. A bit like cow farmers will talk about happy cows are gambolling down the paddock and waving their tails. And as you're swimming along the long lines and inspecting the pearl oysters, you can see whether they are happy and growing. They're open and feeding. You can see the food going down their mouth almost. If they're not happy, we have to do something about it and find out what has happened, why it has happened, the temperature has changed, or has the current changed and is being swept elsewhere. So, and we have to rectify that. It's a very long process. In general, we seed the oysters for the first time at the age of about 3 years of age, when the shell is about 15 centimeters diameter. Now, if it produces a good pearl, we can sometimes extract that pearl without killing the animal, insert a second bead to grow a second pearl. Sometimes we can do a third pearl. Very, very occasionally, we do a fourth pearl. The animal has then done all its work, but we don't waste it because the meat is highly, highly sought after. The muscle, the adductor muscle, which holds the two valves of the pearl oyster together, is very highly sought after. I think if it's dried, it now fetches about $500 per kilo. The fresh meat's about $100 because, you know, it's an aphrodisiac. And people pay fortunes for aphrodisiac. I'm saving some up. I haven't found the need for it yet, but I've got quite a freezer full in case.
As well as their power as an aphrodisiac, pearls are worn as an amulet for longevity of life. In India and China, they are used in medicine to cure leprosy, heart disease, and even the common cold.
Nacre powder. I have some girlfriends telling me that, who has try it on, that it's very effective to prevent aging. It's an anti-aging cosmetic cream, and it also regulates the color of your skin. This pearl oyster is very rich. There's a lot of potentiality. The shell itself can be used for button, it can be used for handicraft, it can be used for cosmetics, it can be used even for cutlery and for glasses, for so many things. In the 1820s, those natural oyster beds were fished heavily for the use of their shells, which were used for button factory in Europe. So most of the natural stock were depleted by the 1960s. So it was very important to build up this industry on cultivated oyster instead of natural oysters.
The Persian Gulf was where the main source of natural pearls came from. Now, they have been found since 300 BC up until 1930. And why there was a depletion basically was because of the oil refineries, because of the pollution that it brought.
Oyster beds have been plundered many times in history to supply the desires of the royal courts of the world.
The last boom, actually, of the natural pearl goes back when massive quantities of oysters were fished in the Gulf of Mannar, southern India, northern Ceylon. There were up to 83 million oysters at one time being fished. They took out these oysters and they just put them up in piles and counted them and weighed them. And the pearl buyers would come and they would buy heaps of oysters in the hope that there would be a pearl inside. This was how the pearl trade was done at that time.
The depleted oyster beds in the late 19th century and the arrival of rich industrialists able to pay high prices for these precious gems gave an urgency to discover the secret of how to culture pearls.
The Japanese were the ones to discover how to cultivate these pearls, which actually existed as natural pearls all over the world. There were several experiments made by Mr. Mikimoto, who in fact got the first patent for a semi-spherical culture pearl.
Kokicho Mikimoto was an inventor at heart. When he saw the price the Chinese were willing to pay for pearls both as jewelry and for their use in medicine, he was determined to uncover the secret of pearls.
Kokichi invented the method of culturing pearls of aqua, but also to produce Sathi pearls or even black Tahitian pearls. They are also using the same method as Kokichi invented.
When Mikimoto brought his pearls over in 1907, he had a very hard time trying to convince the public that these were actually still natural pearls. And it took a court case to actually say that yes, these are also natural pearls, but we'll call them cultured.
Mikimoto spent 15 years of trial and error before finding that inserting a bead cut from the shell of a Mississippi mussel would provide a core that the nacre would form around.
But that is not enough, because you need to also stimulate the growth. And you cut a tiny piece of mantle from a living oyster, and you put that on the side of the bead, and you implant the mantle and the bead inside the oyster. And that mantle will then stimulate, and it's like the DNA almost of what is going to be created, and that stimulates the metabolism for the oyster to then start producing the nacre around.
Before the Second World War, Mikimoto had become so successful that he had opened shops in America, Europe, and the Far East. This revolutionized who could own pearls. The demand for Akoya pearls led to an overpopulating of the Japanese oyster beds. There was urgent need to expand the industry and find new territories to culture oysters. The Japanese exported their techniques and technicians to Australia, Indonesia, Tahiti, and other parts of the South Seas, but kept tight control of the industry, keeping the culturing process a secret for decades.
Up till the 80s, there were mainly all Japanese technicians involved in the farms. Most of it was done by Japanese technicians who kept the practice secret. The Japanese government actually had contracts with a couple of the pearl farms in Australia that they were not allowed to train Australian technicians.
The Japanese, before they left Japan, they were told a few things which became a rule which was not to be broken, and the rule was not broken for many decades. One was that they are not allowed to teach the technique of inserting a nucleus into an oyster to anybody but the Japanese. And second, wherever they had the pearl farms outside Japan, even though the farm may belong to a non-Japanese, it was in the agreement that all pearls made and harvested outside Japan had to be re-imported into Japan, so the Japanese would control the marketing.
Behind the glamour and control, there were hundreds of Japanese technicians who spent years and years working in remote, isolated areas of the South Seas, finding the waters best suited for culturing pearls and perfecting the process.
The early Japanese pioneers with the Australian South Sea pearl industry were tremendous pioneers in any man's language. But it was the Japanese divers, the Japanese managers of the farms that really created the South Sea pearl industry. I don't think there's a single diver, Japanese diver, left.
The ocean of Australia was a very famous place to make pearls. Many young divers went to Australia to look for the big shell to make patterns, but since the Australian ocean is deeper than Japanese water, many young divers died. Something like lung exploded when they dipped too long and come up too fast. So now you see the beautiful cemetery in Broome in Australia, and when you read the tombstones, you will be surprised to read how young they died.
In the early days of culturing pearls, divers used to collect the wild oyster from the seabed that would then be seeded in laboratories. But being a diver was dangerous. There was a risk of shark attack, and many divers died of the bends.
It happened during my times too, and it was really sad. And there was the best divers too, Japanese, Malay, and Chinese,
We work from sun go up till sun go down. Every trip take about 45 minutes, 1 hour, you see. And then go up, maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes, we go down again, When we got rheumatism of bend, we have to hanging underwater. "18 fathom, you feel sore your body, wherever pain is, you have to stop. And then from that, you hanging, you slowly go up. And you keep on until you're good. But if they're not cured, they have to hanging about 2 days, 48 hours underwater, sometimes night time. It's very dangerous.
Diving for pearls is such a haphazard and serendipitous, it just doesn't pay to do it. But occasionally these amazing pearls come up at auction, including this peregrina pearl that Richard Burton bought for Elizabeth Taylor for Valentine's Day.
Cleopatra, siren of the Nile.
It was found off the coast of Panama by a slave in about 1550, and he was given his freedom for finding this pearl. Was sent back to Spain. I think it was Philip II who was on the throne then. He married Henry VIII's daughter, and it was hers until she died. Appeared numerous times in history, and there was a wonderful portrait of Philip wearing it on his hat, and that's how these people showed off one to the other. They were always competing to see who'd have the biggest and best pearls. This was about as big and as good as they got. Anyway, we sold it at auction, and Elizabeth Taylor was the lucky winner of this. I mean, not that she bid on it, but Richard Burton did. And I brought it out. They were staying at Caesar's Palace making a film. And the white Rolls Royce from Caesar's Palace picked me up and brought it there, and we all celebrated with a drink called a salty dog, which I'd never had before. I think it was clam juice and vodka. It was awful, but we had a good time. Anyway, this pearl that had this amazing history. Henry VIII, Philip of Spain, Napoleon. I mean, everybody owned it at one time or another. And I heard Elizabeth go, "Oh my God!" And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I've lost it." And, well, you can imagine the first place we looked, but it wasn't there. And I don't know if you've ever been to Caesar's Palace, but the suites have very, very thick pink shag carpet. And we're all down on our hands and knees crawling around looking for this pearl. I went by a little faux French settee, and under the settee was this white Lhasa Apso. Elizabeth had two of them, and it was chewing on something, and I thought, I know where the pearl is, and I reached in towards the dog, and I thought, no way. So I went over and told her, and she picked the dog up, and it spit the pearl out, and it just had little tiny marks on it. But all I could think of was, it survived wars and, 500 years of history.
By the 1980s, the Japanese monopoly of the cultured pearl industry was broken. The secret of the seeding techniques were leaked, and other producers began to develop their own industry. Today, the atolls of French Polynesia now outproduce the Japanese.
Pearling industry in Tahiti, which is the great pearling industry of the world, producing more cultured pearls, South Sea cultured pearls, probably 4 or 5 times the amount of Australia. Very fortunately, they came on the market about the same time that the emperor in Japan was sick. And when the emperor was sick, it became the fashion to wear black pearls, not to eat lobsters or prawns or flamboyant dinners. So the price of prawns and lobsters went down. The price of black pearls went up. Everybody wanted to wear black pearls in respect for the emperor who, fortunately for the black pearl industry, took a couple of years to die. And that made black pearls, helped to launch black pearls on the market.
Tahitian pearls, often misnamed black pearls, come in every color of the rainbow. In 1961, Bill Reed pioneered the cultivation of pearls in the Tahitian atolls.
Some of the family-operated farms are just mother and father and a couple of uncles and a few other people doing the work. So it's very, very important for the atolls. It's caused a transmigration, if you like, or a remigration back to the islands of their birth and their family. It may seem romantic to a lot of people floating around on nice, calm atolls, but really the atolls of French Polynesia are a maximum of 1 or 2 meters above sea level. I love them, but I'd be 3 months in one atoll, sometimes catch a boat to the next atoll, be there for 3 months. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, but 7 years there was enough. I came back to Australia. When I first came to Broome, I couldn't believe it. It was the most backward colonial place, reminded me very much of colonial Africa.
Today, the rugged and remote areas surrounding Broome in the northwest of Australia are some of the best places to culture the largest and most beautiful of the South Sea pearls. But it was not easy for the cultured pearl industry to get started.
Pearl culture industry in Australia really began in 1956. Prior to that, the Australian government forbade the cultivation of pearls, largely because the few dealers in natural pearls objected.
My father was a diver in the 50s, hard hat diving. My husband and I discovered Deepwater Point, which is 200 kilometres from here. We spent about 2 years trying to get the government to give us a licence. The government made us build 30 kilometres of road first. We had to cart water, probably 100 k's back and forward to get the water to the farm. So it was pioneering times, but a lot of fun. It would have taken us, before we got our first harvest, 6 years, I think. There's a little bit of pain involved, and I think that's why pearls will always retain its value and its beauty, because it is a struggle. And it's something that you have to, you live. It's not something you can close the door at 5 o'clock and turn up at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, because the tides, the weather, the whole makeup of producing a pearl is 24 hours a day.
With more and more pearls produced today, the struggle has moved on. Pearl farmers need to supply a higher quality cultured pearl with a higher density of nacre, as this makes a more lustrous and valuable gem. Overdensity of oysters in the lagoons can lead to a drop in the quality of their pearls. This was happening in Tahiti in the 1980s and prompted the government to institute a system of quality control. Machines now X-ray the farmer's pearls to ensure that there is a thick and high enough quality layer of nacre around the bead to give a strong, lasting pearl. Pearls with too thin a layer of nacre are marked and removed. All pearls that pass the quality control are given a certificate for exportation. The reject pearls are crushed and totally removed from any possibility of being sold. The official government crushing machine may seem primitive, but it's effective. The pearl farmer and the government officials witness that all the bad pearls are destroyed to stop them finding their way into the black market.
The reject, unfortunately, at the beginning, I thought it was more romantic to throw them back to the sea. So we were throwing them back to the sea, but now we have a better utilization, I will say. We crush them in powder, and we use them for cosmetics. There's a very, very strict control at the airport and at the port to see if there's any smuggling out of the pearls.
It's not only smugglers, but thieves that threaten the pearl farmers. With 25 miles of coastline to watch, one farm in Bali had $3 million worth of oysters stolen in one night by a highly organized gang. Even the theft of jewelry can be difficult to trace. In 1918, a whole book was devoted to detailing the shapes, sizes, and weights of each pearl from this stolen oriental necklace.
Well, very often I think the people who bought these things didn't necessarily know to whom they had belonged, because unlike paintings where the provenance is very important, very often with jewelry they're trying to hide where it came. I mean, say for instance after the revolution in Russia. I mean, I know I sold things that had come out of Russia, but the people that had brought them out didn't want anyone to know that they had been part of the Russian crown jewels. And it was one of those things where it wasn't necessarily good news for the people selling it to have it known who owned it before. And unfortunately with pearls, because you can take a strand of pearls apart so easily, very often what's thought of to be, the famous necklace may only have a few pearls from that source. So, I mean, things do get changed around.
To tell the difference between a natural pearl and a cultured pearl is very difficult. And actually, the first thing you can do to tell if it is a natural pearl or not, or cultured and natural against a simulant or plastic pearl, is actually you do put it to your teeth. You just abrade it a little bit and there'll be a rough feel to it. Whereas if it has a plastic skin over it, it'll be very smooth. The conclusive way of telling if it's a natural pearl is actually by X-ray, because you need to go and see if there's a core inside. And a dentist X-ray will not do.
Fake pearls are almost as old as the genuine item, and there is a whole industry of imitations.
Pearls were so rare in, say, the 16th century. When you see portraits of Queen Elizabeth of England covered with pearls, a lot of those pearls were blown glass, covered with pearlescence, and imitation pearls until I believe the very beginning of the 20th century were still made of blown glass. In the 60s, I had pearls made. There was a marvelous man in Brooklyn then who made really, really wonderful pearls for me, shaded pearls in every color. And I started making necklaces of mixtures of 5 or 6 different colored pearls. And some of the more fashionable ladies in the world and rich ladies used to wear my multicolored pearls, and everybody thought they were $1 million. The women who had wonderful precious jewelry, I think liked wearing costume jewelry because no lady had a necklace of every color. But with costume jewelry, she could have everything. Also, I think wearing costume jewelry, non-real jewelry, made women feel younger, a little more with it.
One of the big designers that really caused a stink with her accessories, and it became so much part of the look that even she became famous for it, was Coco Chanel.
Coco Chanel once said that her favorite jewelry was pearls because you always saw the woman first before you saw the jewelry. And she said to her lover, Boy Capel, if I'm a mistress, I should be treated like one. And the way she felt that she should be treated like a mistress was to have pearls.
She showed women could wear real ones and fake ones together. It was such a part of her look that pearls arrived big time on the scene. And that there's been a transformation going on, or evolution going on. You'll have your sophisticated, beautiful ladies, safe and conservative, wear their nice, simple strands. But then on the other hand, you'll have Madonna putting tons on in the 80s, and then she's got lace gloves and she's got funky brood. She made it fun.
People come to me and they ask me, how do you value a pearl? And of course, it depends. It very much depends on the physical properties of the pearl, but also on the historical interest of the pearl. From Catherine the Great to Barbara Hutton's, Maria Callas, Jackie Kennedy's pearls that we sold, which Kenneth J. Lane gave her in 1962. And these simulated pearls are worth about $100, sold at auction with Sotheby's for over $200,000.
3 strands of perfectly nice pearls sold for $211,000. We couldn't believe the prices.
They were her pearls, simulated, natural or cultured, it didn't matter. Jewelry is very much, it's like going into someone's handbag. It's a very personal, you can almost smell the person sometimes who's worn it. I mean, it's been on their body, it's been on their person, it's adorned that person.
When I consider a pearl, compared to all other gems, what's striking about it is that pearls are the only gem that touch back. They're an immortal skin. Since my approach to gems is one of inspiration for things that are primal, living, and seductive, a number of the jewels that I've collected and used in my pieces, whether jewelry or sculpture or paintings, have a type of talismanic character to them. This is an Australian pearl, a large Australian pearl. To have this heart beating over a woman's heart is something that select clients would covet because of its rarity. I have 2 popular pearls here. One, I love this almost fish hook, but it's a J for John. How extraordinary that an oyster could do that for me. And something that's been very popular over the years that can take on these different forms that represent so much of the symbols of love throughout all of our civilizations. It's amazing that they ever exist.
Back at Ettore, each pearl goes through many stages of selection, sorting sizes, shapes, colors and undertones, before they can begin to make a piece of jewelry.
With necklaces of this quality, sometimes we might start making a necklace one day and then build on it over the week and try and put a few more pearls on it. Then as the week goes past, then at the end of the week we might take a few pearls out again and then add a few in. So it takes a long time and a lot of patience. And really there's no machine that can be used to do this process. It's all the eye, really the sight, and based very much on experience. Last year we managed to make 2 fine quality 18 to 20 millimeters. It was the first time we managed to do those, and those type of necklaces will probably retail in excess of $1 million US.
Today, an auction is the main place to find natural and rare cultured pearl jewelry. In 1992 at Sotheby's, New York, a cultured pearl necklace sold for $2.3 million US. In the 1980s, with the boom in cultured pearl production and farms all over the South Seas, not only quality, but marketing became more critical. Mikimoto, the father of cultured pearls, had understood that marketing was as important as production.
A little bit like maybe Henry Ford with his Model T, Mr. Mikimoto had the aim that at the end every woman in this world could somehow afford to wear a pearl. And Mr. Mikimoto developed into an excellent marketer. He was a fantastic marketing man for the product. And when General MacArthur was in Japan with the occupation forces, he set up a team to investigate the entire Japanese pearling industry, to rekindle it again after the war. But at the same time, all the GIs, all the soldiers, the occupation forces, were at the same time a welcome customer for this product. And they had money, they had cash, they bought the Japanese pearls, and every GI who stayed in Japan had the aim to bring back to his fiancée or his wife or his mother a little pearl necklace from Japan. So they not only rekindled the industry, but they also started the export and the popularization of this product in America as well as in other parts of the world.
Today it is the Chinese who are mass-producing freshwater cultured pearls. They produce over a ton of pearls a year and use half of them for medicines. Though far from the quality of the Japanese Akoya or the South Seas, they are continuing Mikimoto's dream to make pearls accessible to the masses.
Growing up, looking at, the people in my life that had pearls, my grandmother has 3 sets of pearls. My mother has a strand of pearls as well. And, pearls were always, with my mother and my grandmother, they're reserved as being something very special that you wear at a one-off occasion, maybe a wedding. You don't enjoy them from day to day.
The twin set and pearl brigade, very much, I suppose, in the 40s, 50s and 60s, was almost like a uniform. But I can see why you don't have to think about wearing your jewellery. You just put your pearls on and you feel dressed. You feel comfortable, but you feel dressed. Now people can wear a pearl necklace with their jeans. They can wear that same pearl necklace with their ball gown or riding their Harley.
Sandra, this way, please. Sandra, this way, please.
We felt there was a need to give the South Sea pearl a new image. I mean, we had the image of the classical strand was established, so the classical pair of earring was there and will always be there. But we felt that we wanted to have South Sea pearls being worn, but by a younger crowd, but also started developing a jewelry range that would have more of an attraction to the groovy people as well.
Designers like Alexander McQueen put pearls in places and situations that stimulate the imagination.
Celebrity factor for me is something that I'm very well aware of is going to push our brand up with the big players. We're the new kid on the block, but we know that by working with celebrities, it's going to put us right up there.
Guys can wear pearls, that's really cool. bit of a fan of your tour?
I am, and they've said I can keep these, so I'm a big fan now.
You've got to be happy with that.
I was actually at a fashion show in Australia, and I quite simply was given a single pearl on a leather strand. And it was a really cool piece, and I was quite shocked that, you know, you could actually do this, and that it was a piece that, you know, it was, you know, both men and women can wear it, and I was quite impressed. So I came and had a meeting with Attore, and then basically they wanted to upgrade my pearl, and they said, you know, I could pick out any pearl, and there was the most amazing gold pearl that looks like it's gold rather than being a pearl. And I chose that one, and at this stage not realizing the kind of price that is put on a pearl of that quality.
I've worked with over 170 stars, from the Sharon Stones, the Drew Barrymores, the Catherine Zeta-Jones, Annie Lennox, you know, and the old divas like Faye Dunaway and Shirley MacLaine and Diana Ross. And the funny thing with the guys is you've got to watch, because they're all afraid of, they don't want to look too affected or too feminine, or they don't want to look gay in any way. But yet they want their pictures to be a little different, and so on and so on.
You know, pearls are difficult. Pearls are probably, you know, the hardest thing to actually work with, to put into men's jewelry. And it's based around something that seems quite ridiculous, but it's because they are so amazing and so beautiful. So to actually get a man or a male to wear them, it's difficult.
What are you looking forward to most about it this year? You know what? I think the thing about having...
This year, we took Hollywood by storm as part of a strategy. We'd already started that in Australia by sponsoring the Independent Film Awards and dressed Australian film stars. And our next move was to Golden Globes.
Put together a pitch letter to the studio executive and waiting for their response. Of those Disney projects, the first one is done. The second one, you're reading, and that's what we're going to try and put pearls in.
Okay. Primary Actions specialize in placing luxury goods on Hollywood stars. Pearls de Tahiti is one of their newest clients.
What our clients hire us for is to obtain positions in a film to where their exposure of their brand can be recognized. Because if a film grosses $100 million, let's say, right, that means that film has probably reached 11 to 13 million people. And in print, that's a difficult task. It's actually very costly. And film has no demographics, right? And it reaches everyone, whether it's here in the United States, East, Middle, West, all across the world. And eventually it ends up in DVD, which even opens the horizon even bigger. And what we do is we read scripts, we break them down. We look for every corner that we can find that can fit our client's needs.
It's always nice to have your own jewelry, but I have to say, borrowing jewelry has become very popular, and I welcome it. Especially when you borrow it and at the end of the day they give it to you. That really makes it worth your while. But
there have been articles printed in many magazines. They have stated that sales have increased anywhere from 70% up to 900%. And in jewelry, what ends up happening is they just sell them out. So it's a real good way for our clients, very profitable for them. And everything is about profits today.
But the designers, I mean, they really get a lot of their stuff out there now with, you know, with the media, the magazines, and certain people wearing their stuff, and it has such an impact on careers now. It's amazing.
The most exciting thing for me was when I received a call from Richard Taylor, and he said, "I'd like you to come over. I want you to show your jewellery to Diane Keaton." I went, "What?" I couldn't believe it. So we took a limousine and we drove over and we had all the jewellery. I wasn't sure whether, you know, she's actually going to wear it, whether they just take this jewellery and, you know, then, you know, you have to wait and see if it comes on, or whether they do guarantee it. It was our first run at it. So I thought, oh my goodness, the jewellery's gone over, we've signed it all out, you know, so now what do we do, the waiting game? So And everybody had told us they're not necessarily going to wear the jewellery, even if they do take it. So I called my husband at home in Australia and I said, "Are you getting the Golden Globes over there?" Yes, we're getting it. And I said, "Have you seen Diane Keaton come through?" "Yes, she came through. She says a whole strand of pearls swinging backward and forward," and I'm screaming, "You're joking, you know." I said, "What do they look like? Are they coming down almost to her knees?" "Yes." "Oh, they're ours." It was our prize strand, our $1 million strand. It's not always like that. There are the hard-edge situations when you're out there fighting to get your product on and people are out paying money, trying to ensure that they have placement with their jewellery around Golden Globes, Oscars. There are contracts that they enter into with the stars, and so you'll see them wearing it through the entire award season. I'm not sure how to deal with that. I believe that we've got the most beautiful thing, a pearl, a gift of nature, a beautiful, beautiful gem. I don't think we need to have to pay people to wear them.
There's something about pearls that's very, very difficult to describe. They're a very sensuous gem. As a pearl farmer, I suppose I'd love every pearl to turn out big and round and flawless. Perfectly round pearl is worth a lot more than an irregular shaped pearl. A pearl of a white-pink colour is worth a lot more than a yellow colour, but shape and colour are subjective factors. Some like blonde, some like brunette. So people shouldn't be put off by one pearl being cheaper than another.
Pearls continue to be a symbol for a moment, an emotion, or something precious and rare. But this delicate and fragile creation, like love itself, cannot be taken for granted.
No man can be in charge of it. No man can have total control over the total environment of creating this beautiful jewel. It puts man's arrogance in place. But that little creature that you hold in your hand or you wear or admire has kept someone in check. And I think it just makes that little gem that much more important and that much more sought after. And that's what I love